Welcome to the Performance Enhancing Podcast. It's like steroids for your brain. A podcast for people looking to live life at their peak potential. Chock full of real-world tools and knowledge that you can apply in your life today. By providing you with a lens into the lives, beliefs, practices, and actions of those who are already living extraordinary lives, the Performance Enhancing Podcast will help you shift your mindset or create that change in your daily rituals and habits so you can explode with success in the areas of life that are most important to you. So get ready for another dose of Performance Enhancing Podcast with SatoriPrime. Here's your host, Ferdman.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Performance Enhancing Podcast or PEP Talk with your host, Ferdman. And I am just a host for the next few sessions, actually. So my brother and the goddess herself, Marci, decided to sit down and have a 2-hour-long conversation about everything awesome. Topics range from ayahuasca to raising kids to manifesting, and I quote, like a motherfucker, to healing oneself, to surrender and love. It was just such a great, raw conversation, and I think you guys need to at least hear it. So I'm actually going to stand in the background for the next 4 episodes. It was 2 hours, so I'm going to break it up into 4 chunks. And this one specifically, they started talking around their ayahuasca experience. You've heard Guy and I speak about this before. Can't recommend it highly enough. Marci actually just took a group out to Costa Rica, and they did 6 days in the jungle, which is amazing. Guy's actually going to do that with her coming up in November. But if you guys want to find out about their initial, kind of how they heard about it, their first time doing it, what that was like, that's all going to be stuff in this part over here. So I hope you enjoy it. And stay tuned. The conversation really goes all over the place. So we're going to do this in 4 parts. And this is part 1. Enjoy. Let's do that. Do a little bit of this.
Somewhere else? In the fire. We're not having a fire right now.
This is why we need an audio guy.
We're just enjoying. Yeah. I'm really grateful that you're so prone on jumping in on this. I'd be like,
hands on.
Somebody do something.
Yeah. I'm a doer, honey.
You are a doer.
Immigrant.
Good job.
You give me like a avocado, a snorkel, and a paper cup, and you're surprised what I can do.
You would create a bomb.
Just because I look like a terrorist doesn't mean I am one.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
God, God, people.
Now we know.
All right.
I mean, terrorists don't wear bright underwear.
We're recording. They don't.
Terrorists do not wear bright underwear.
Let's just make sure that works.
Or are they commando? They're somewhere else.
All right. We're recording. They don't.
Terrorists do not wear bright underwear.
This is on. Is this thing on? I don't know. I think we might be recording from this audio.
Oh, snap. That looks pretty. You did good.
I think it actually might be recording from the computer. Alright, well, kind of is what it kind of is.
Guy, I'm just fucking happy to be here, outside, in the beautiful view.
Okay.
The nice, beautiful wind, and I've seen your pretty, bright undies at least 5 times.
5 times.
At least 5 times.
So that was the intro.
Yo.
To everybody. What's up, baby?
Hi.
So we don't really know what we're doing here.
No, we don't.
We don't.
For those of you, whether you're listening on audio or video, the male's voice is Guy Ferdman. The more feminine voice.
The sexy.
The sexy and luscious Marci Locke.
Yep.
The wonderful Marci Locke is here with me.
Oh.
And there's really no context for this too much, except for we're going to talk some high-end spiritual...
Who knows?
Something. And I guess so the context for all this, so you guys understand, is so Marci and I have known each other for maybe like 6 weeks now. Maybe, right? Give or take?
Yeah.
Becoming
When
quick.
did Andrew and Faith get married? Pretty much then.
Sometime in the last decade or so, I
And
believe.
then I was gone for 3 weeks in Colombia, all over.
And how this this relationship came about is we actually ended up walking down the aisle together.
Yeah, we did.
Sans vows, though. No vows. And yeah, just kind of a nice little connection, and she bought my sunglasses quickly thereafter and decided to start emulating my life completely in every single thing that I did. So just trying to recreate my life, really. Anyway, without all the bullshit, her and I get together and we have these really wonderful conversations all the time.
Yeah.
And we always think to ourselves, wouldn't this be nice if it was recorded in some way, shape, or form? But since we don't have our AV people, it looks the way it looks.
It's perfect. Shows our skills and abilities.
And we
you
hope...
just said you're a fucking doer.
I'm a fucking doer.
We're doing, even without attachments or expectations.
Yeah. So I guess I'll just start and build some context. I mean, the last... I don't have to talk to you guys. I'll talk to you. The last... Marci just did an amazing trip down to Colombia with a group of spectacular people.
Yeah.
Where they partook in some plant medicine and some other...
I feel like you should just take your shirt off being in the sun in the video. I mean,
really sunny.
Right now they're just like, I don't care what you're going to say.
But then the whole video is going to have to be like, I'm up here, guys. I'm up here.
Guys, right here. Why do you think I changed out of my bikini and I put on actual
clothes? We have some great stuff to share with you, even though underneath these shirts lie beautifully skinned humans.
Out here.
Yeah. So she went out to Colombia, had these amazing experiences, which I wanted to share a little bit about, and some of the things that have come out from her group and shared. And then I've also had just a good amount of experiences with plant medicines, really anywhere from mushrooms to ayahuasca. And I have no qualms about it or judgments about whether people have judgments about it.
Yeah.
They've been extremely powerful tools in my life.
Yeah.
And through some practices outside of hallucinogenics and psychedelics, I've been able, through meditation, to actually activate some of this stuff in my own body that I'd love to talk to you guys about too, but I'm sure it'll kind of organically grow from there. Yeah,
well, my main intention is realizing from the conversations we've had, because you've done ayahuasca like 20 times, right? Mm-hmm. I did just in this last trip to Colombia like 90 hours myself, because I go 6 days back to back, 5-6 ceremonies, 10-15 hours in each time. Mm-hmm. And from that, from our conversations, and I mean you have a different experience than I do. My experience was like, no, I've never done drugs my entire life. Like I was always was raised LDS Mormon, like very black and white, like everything's evil and the devil. And so I had these perceptions that makes me bad, shameful. And so even for me to go to the place of looking at breaking down consciousness and seeing what is possible, what I found very interesting in our conversations is how much fear is built around it outside of it. And I experienced that with my peeps that were going down, is like all this fear, all these stories, all these things. And so what I thought was beautiful is like talking to you, Guy, before I went to Colombia, I was so fucking excited as to implementing it being a relationship experience, and so many like beautiful tips and things that my peeps got to experience down there, and how much is available that the world doesn't know is available. Yeah. And you and I talked about sun gazing, I think, right? Did I tell you about sun gazing, right? Where it's like, I see that as there's this thing right there, this source that people are always walking by and have no idea that they can have energy from or different things from. Yeah. And it's kind of like the same thing, like what's available that we aren't seeing is available, and where are we projected fear and things around it. So that was more like, I was loving all the things that you have to share on, first off, why? Like, why would you even say that that's something that is a draw? Why did you go into it? And how do you take out the fear around it? Just to almost like be blatantly like, you have no attachments or qualms. I don't. You know that I don't give a fuck. Sure. Let's say that again. Yeah. I don't give a fuck what anybody thinks about me. Because this is my experience. It's like my perfect way, right? Yeah. So what I thought was so great about this, and I actually told my peeps, I'm like, I'm going to have a conversation with one of my amazing, beautiful besties here that has so much experience in this to literally like, what is really possible there? Why is that even, something that is available, and where do we drop the fear around it? And you sharing what comes from you, because every single time I talk to you and we go like, holy shit, it's been 6 hours.
Yeah, how did that
dark.
Happen? Yeah.
And we went so deep that we're like, oh my gosh, if we would have recorded this, it would offer so much insight for people. And that's really my intention out of this, even though I don't really have an intention. No attachments or expectations, just wanting to recreate this beautiful space of understanding from your experience and my experience. I think most people aren't willing to share it because they go, well, what if I won't want to say out there that this is what I do or this is what it is, because they might have attachments that I'm doing drugs in some crazy jungle or this or that. Fuck that. We don't care. We're here.
Yeah.
Right?
It took me a little while to get rid of that connotation too, until I did it. And I think I will say this for any drug experience I've ever had, and I honestly honor a lot of them, some of the best experiences of my life, to be perfectly honest. And I say that because I never did drugs as an escapism. Like maybe when I was younger, it was a little bit more of the escapist thing, but for me it's always been very experiential, educational in nature. And what I've noticed in general is it just gives you access to alternate paradigms, right? So I can only ever speak from my experience. I know for a lot of people, it does take them down some really deep, dark tunnels and puts their family through shit. So I'm being sensitive to that also. But as far as, I've always been an experience junkie. I think you're a little bit of the same. Kind of jump into... No. Yeah. Marci's like, let me think about it for a minute. No, I mean, I'm like a head first, jump first, ask questions later kind of guy. That's served me well. It was more difficult, maybe you can talk to that too. When I was younger, I would be very challenged by that because it would put me in a lot of rough circumstances. And I don't think I was at a development point in my life yet where I could handle the repercussions of jumping into stuff so quickly without understanding it. These days, I'm like, whatever shows up, I'm great. I'll learn, I'll adapt, I'll whatever. So I don't have issues, and I've noticed that even with these really heightened experiences, these extreme experiences to some people, I didn't ask questions. Someone told me about it, I'm like, yep.
Yes. So let's speak to that right now first, because that was same thing. I got offered. They're like, hey, you got to go to this place in Colombia and do this experience, and all I heard was like, okay. I literally was like, all right, tune in. Yep. And I was in the airport on my way down to Colombia, and someone was like, why are you going to Colombia? And I was like, oh, we're doing ayahuasca. And they were like, oh my gosh, you could die. Yeah. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but that's where I'm going and that's what I'm doing. And someone was like, I'll hold your hair back. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'm there.
Yeah.
And I think this is where maybe it's that purity of going, okay, this is where I feel called. So, people like, you'll hear people go, that's come up for me. I've been feeling into that, but then what do? Well, what is this?
Yeah.
And they go research or do that, and you hear all these scary things. So for me, I didn't hear the scary things because I just tuned in, was like, there's something there I get to learn. This is what I'm feeling, where I get to go. And my experience was not like all those scary things. So maybe you can talk to that as to like...
Yeah, same thing for me. I mean, any developmental experience I've ever had, I know very little information about it. And mostly because I don't want other people's experiences shaping my own.
That's it.
Yeah.
Right there.
I really don't.
That's why it's so important.
Yeah, and what I've learned in my lifetime is that there's a big difference between attachment and commitment. So if you're attached to something, like even doing ayahuasca and have like a certain experience that you're going for.
Well, they had that experience.
Exactly. So. I need to have that experience too, and then you try to recreate it, and then you'll be upset because that's what attachment does. It creates expectation.
Yep.
Expectations in any, whether short term, long term, will be eventually unfulfilled, and it'll cause upset in your life. And I've seen people go into myriads of these kind of experiences with some expectation, and that's the only place you can get upset from.
Yeah.
So for me too, like I didn't know about the purging, I didn't know about anything. First time I heard someone purge, I'm like, what the fuck was that demon? Like I really didn't know what was happening.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it gives you an expansive view because you're really not sitting there trying to cross the T's and dot the I's. Just like, okay, let's see what happens. So I believe that for me, it's interesting that you said someone told you can lose your life. I do all my experiences with the context of knowing that this could end my life. And I'm totally at peace with all of that because ultimately my realization is that every moment of every day when I wake up or step outside, that could be the last moment of my life. So I could die without choosing it, or I could do something that would kill me. And at least I got to say in that situation, but I would go out on a high note.
Yeah, but what I think you're speaking to is a whole different level of consciousness. It's like some of my peeps that have come back from Colombia, now that they've experienced such in-depth, like, knowing and breaking through perceptions and paradigms and vibrations, etc., they go to the surface shit that happens, like, silly human brain.
Right.
Silly. And it's like going, like, if you lost all of that, if none of that existed, if you did die, can you be in a place of, like, I'm perfect, whole, and complete, like, this is the perfect experience, like, there's no parameters anymore. But I think it's those experiences that lead to that.
Yes.
And what I really want to touch base on what you said, which is there was almost a reason why with my peeps, I hardly told them anything. Almost all my experiences, my badass breakthroughs, we go do crazy shit. And I'm like, I know if I tell you da-da-da-da, again, expectations, thoughts, attachments, words, da-da-da, I was like, I want this to be sacred. There's very few things I'll tell you, and it's that you get to go in it. This is, you get to have an intention. You can say, this is what is this? Like, I want to release this. I know this is where I struggle. I want to receive this and have, like, that beauty in it. But if you go, oh, you're going to experience this, and this, and this, then, you know, it blocks all that.
Yeah.
So in you experiencing it for the first time, or like, what made you go into doing it? I mean, 20 times later.
20 times later, yeah.
Yeah.
First time, man. I'm a total, like, I'm an explorer of life.
Yeah.
And I want all of them. So I've never been the type of person to say, okay, well, that one makes me feel uncomfortable. Let's not do that one. I really will explore anything from the very uncomfortable to myself, and that's in life, sexuality, conversation, relationships. It doesn't matter to me. I'm like, how do I know?
Yeah.
And I think, again, that starts from, like, early age with, like, food and stuff. Like, people will try certain foods, like, I don't like the texture of this, or I'm not going to try that because in my mind it feels a certain way. I was never that way. I was just always brought up to just try. Like, why not just try? And I grew up around a lot of people who I saw not living their life that way. I'm like, this is your life experience. You don't like something, fine, but, like, put it in your mouth. Give it a go. And
just put it in your mouth.
Just put it in your mouth, guys.
Just
Hashtag
try it.
Just put it in your mouth.
Oh my gosh, we could turn everything into a sexual joke.
Yeah. And you know what? Again, that serves me. It took me some time until there wasn't a lot of resistance around that. But when I found out about this experience, hallucinogenics have always been interesting to me. I've found mushroom trips, whatever you want to call them, which is another form of plant medicine, to be some of the most enlightening breakthrough experiences of my entire life. A friend of mine, Anat, did ayahuasca. Hopefully you don't mind me saying that. 3 years back, and she explained the experience to me, and I immediately got that this was one of those things that no language will ever teach me about what the hell this girl just went through. And I've had enough of those kind of experiences in my life to know that language is not expansive enough to relay what the hell is going on in there.
Yeah.
So she said a few things. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about, and I have to know what you're talking about. So, and she's like, do you want to know more? I said, no. I'm like, just tell me where to go. And I went, literally walk into this room, everyone's wearing white, and I wasn't, because I didn't know. They're, getting really intentional and praying, and the only thing I knew was just to, like, eat clean for a week, basically. And I remember taking it, and, all drugs come on differently, like, the experience of them coming on is really differently, and ayahuasca is very gentle, the way it comes on. And I remember it being, like, really subtle, and sitting there and kind of, like, seeing, like, a flash of, like, light come across my consciousness, and I'm like, was that it? And then, like, and I remember...
And this is your first experience,
This is
right?
my first experience. And, like, most people, when they take their first drink, it doesn't really hit you very hard. Yeah. It's very gentle. And you're like, okay, is this it? And I remember just being disappointed. Like, what did I pay for? Like, why am I doing this shit, And then by, like, the second drink, you're just in a different dimension and starting to experience all these things. Really, I'll, like, highlight an interesting experience for me so you guys can get a taste of what this is about. I started playing around with my thoughts and immediately understood that, like, fighting this thing is stop fighting this thing. Like, whatever it's doing, you're not required for this experience. So, but what I started having was, like, thoughts, and I suddenly had the vision of, like, I could see the thread of my thought. So I'm like, okay, let me follow the thought, because I've always wondered, like, what's the origin of a thought, right? Like, that's this kind of stuff that starts happening there. And I kept, like, flowing it, and no matter where I followed it, it was never ended up inside of myself. Like, the origin was never within. And I'm like, isn't that interesting? Because the thoughts always feel like they're appearing from within, and yet I can't seem
like, you are the thinker of your thoughts, but you're not the thinker of or you're not the thoughts, you're just the thinker of your thoughts.
So I'm like, I'm not originating my thoughts. And immediately I had this image of, like, an antenna sticking out of my head. And I was immediately aware that yeah, exactly. These drugs make you trip. And it's really not a drug, it really is a medicine because the impact it has on the physical body as well. But I had this image of this antenna sticking out of the side of my head, and I could just tell that this antenna was set to a frequency, like a radio frequency. And I chose this frequency. And the thoughts that I'm hearing is the resonant information that I'm picking up from around me because that's what this antenna is set to. So all these thoughts that I've had that are like negative and this and that, like I chose this experience, like that's my opponent in this lifetime. So I have that thought, and then as I think about my opponent in front of me, I arise, like another one of me, except this version of me is my pure ego. So here I am sitting as like pure spirit, and in front of me is this pure ego. And I've always had an issue with like anger and like suicide and depression, like going back to my teenage years, and it still shows up like anger in different ways in my life, although that's seems to have subsided substantially over the last few years. And I'm sitting there with my ego, having a conversation like with me and Marci, like it's that real. And my ego, I suddenly get this image that my ego, when I had like my first transformation, I blamed the thoughts in my head for getting me to like suicide and depression, and because of that became very fearful of ever relapsing in that thought pattern. So I kind of like stuck that voice that you hear in your head that you're observing, I stuck it in this like black box, and I basically said,
don't open.
Yeah, bye-bye. Like, it was a good time. You had a good run by yourself. Like, thanks for all that. Like, that's done now. We're going to be over here. Peace. But I would flare up with these angers and things, and I always wondered why. And I got this image of, like, my ego being like a dark room, like a small, pestilent child in a room. And, like, what's a child going to do if you lock it up? It's just going to bang on the door, like, incessantly, right? Yeah. And once in a while, it's going to break through, and it's going to be like, motherfucker! and I'm like, that's how it's been happening, because I've been, like, trying to cap this thing. So I had this image of, like, the Incredible Hulk, always trying not to become the Incredible Hulk, and that's what happened to me. So it's sitting in front of me, and it's upset. Like, this ego of mine is upset. And I'm like, hey. And he's like, what's going on? And I'm like, you look angry. He's like, yeah, I'm fucking angry. And I'm like, what are you angry about? He goes, you don't let me talk anymore. And I'm like, well, we had a pretty bad experience when you were at the helm. I'm like, I'm not good with that anymore. He goes, well, I don't give a shit. He goes, I want my space too. And it was like a big insight for me. And I made a deal with him then. I won't tell you the whole conversation, but the deal was, I get it. Like, this isn't a functioning relationship anymore. And it hasn't been for a long time, and that's my fault. Like, I had to take responsibility for that. I'm like, so here's the deal. I'm going to start listening again. But here's the thing. I'm the voice. Like, I get to say. So, like, fast forward like a month, I actually went to Hawaii to go make the medicine after I had a few experiences with it, because I want to be in service, like, immediately. With the things that are good, like, I want to serve. I want to know how it's done. I want to be able to give back. So I went to Hawaii for a week with the shaman to go make this medicine also. And I'm sorry, I know this is like a long story, but it's an interesting one. So the first night I got there, we did ceremony, and I was really tired, and I had one of my most difficult experiences where I really wanted to just like call my mom, tell her I'm dying. Like, this is it, Mom, I'm sorry, I drank too much medication, your son's leaving his body, and that's that. And after 6 hours, I actually had this really beautiful experience outside in the moonlight. But the next morning I wake up, and one of the things we do when we make medicine is we sit around these large logs and we hit these like vines into Peruvian music, and we take medicine in the morning. And I had a very difficult physical experience the night before, so when I drank the medicine, like, physicality came up, and it scared my body again, because like my heart rate got real fast and stuff like that. And again, this is all in your mind. Your mind is doing all this, and nothing was happening to my body. And I'm sitting there trying to hit this vine, and I'm having like a panic attack, basically. And I think to myself, okay, well, if I hit this vine a few more times, like, my heart is going to explode out of my chest. So maybe I need to like relax and sit back for a second. And I sit back, and I think to myself, what the fuck is going on right now? And that conversation with my ego pops up into my head. And I go, oh shit, I'm not listening again. He's freaking the fuck out. That's what's going on. So like, I say that, and of course, whoop, 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 like, he arises in front of me, and he's again just angry. Why? Because I'm not holding up my part of the deal, right? He's pissed off. So I'm like, okay. And I'm like, okay, why are you angry this time? He goes, I don't like this medicine. I'm like, I'm clear about that. Yeah. I'm like, what don't you like about it? He goes, well, it's trying to kill us. I said, well, last night was pretty bad. I'll give you that. I'm like, but that didn't kill us. Right now, I feel a tenth of that, if that. I'm like, so chances are it's not going to kill us. I'm like, I could run down the driveway. Heart rate will be about what it is right now, right? He goes, okay, you're right. And I'm like, okay, great. So I'm like, what other things don't you like about it? And he keeps telling me he doesn't like the medicine. I'm like, well, here's what you don't understand. This medicine's not for you. This medicine's for my heart, and it's for my soul. And you're getting in the way of it doing its work. And he goes, okay. and he leaves, like walks off like peacefully, and my whole body relaxes, my heart rate goes back down to normal, like completely placid, and just start having this beautiful experience all over again. So I want to tell you that story because I want to give you some of the like things that are like could happen, are available to you again, not to set any expectation, just something that happened to me. And that might seem trivial, but that lesson to me has basically saved like my life over the last few years, because before, where there was just anger showing up, I have the access point to where the anger has been coming from, to the point where I'm like angry, I'm like, okay, all I gotta do is just tune in and listen. And it's not getting to say, but I have like a tool now that I get to use for the rest of my life, and I'm like about as placid as a person you'll ever meet now.
So that is actually a huge golden nugget of truth that most people is probably, I'd say, the biggest benefit and beautiful gift out of experiencing something like the plant-based medicine that allows you to kind of like allow what's really going on inside and breaking down these parameters and seeing the vibration that you're at. So when you were talking about, it's like the angry child in the room, the dark room, like boom, boom, boom. My thoughts are, see, again, when we reject the dark, we're trying to fight the dark. We're trying to force the ego. I actually had the exact conversation about the ego and loving the ego and seeing what it's there to say. It's just like, it's there to protect you, but unless you hear it and you feel it, it's like, it's not something to fear or to fight. It's actually there doing its job. So then when we treat it like it's, you know, the 6-year-old inside us, like what's really there, what's going on in the feedback, it actually love the dark. You see it as that's what releases you. So I'll kind of attest to this in that I think I told you about one of my first experiences. It was like same thing. First day was kind of like, you know, this is my thought. I've done 20 years of inner work. Is this like, maybe this won't affect me because all these other people are having like deep experiences. I'm just like sitting outside, looking at the stars, feeling like a little like flow. And then I asked, you know, so I was like, cool, what do I get to know? And I had massive downloads and saw energy. And that's what I'm saying, like wiping away this thing. Well, the next day I got kicked on my ass, like in the dirt, you know, and what I experienced was my darkness out of like the most beautiful love for it. Like seeing my shame from when I was like 4 years old and decided that I was ugly and not, you know, smart enough and I didn't want to be seen and I wanted to hide. And so there's this space inside me, the shame, the dark, right, that was inside me that I tried to stuff so far down. And even having that vibration of shame inside me is blocking manifestation, is blocking my level of worthiness to receive all the things I want. So it's like, I didn't know it was there until it was like, oh my gosh, I see you. And I could see it and I could love it. And I literally was like experienced the shame, felt the shame, the vulnerability of it, and saw that this 4-year-old chose that radio antenna. The 4-year-old chose those perceptions, those ideas, those things, and I could just love it. And it was like the most beautiful gift of loving the dark, to release the dark, to allow light. So when I think about when the ego's in the dark room, it's dark. And what people don't understand is the moment you open the door, you let light into the dark. And it's no longer darkness. And so that is, even though that's your story of your experience and like seeing it, mine was different in like how I loved my darkness, and now I don't fight the darkness. There's nothing to fight.
Same.
That's the thing. There's like breaking all the things. There's nothing to fight. I'm just fucking effortless, and that's what I think so many people come out of. But in some form, they get to approach the ego, shame, anything that's dark, and actually see it through. Oh my gosh, I chose this because of this, and these are the conformities or the perceptions or the parameters I chose. Wow, that was actually never true. This is actually what is possible in front of me. You know, I were listening to a thing, Bashar or whatever, the guy who was channeling Bashar, and he was talking about ayahuasca. And it's like, it is there for you to see the different vibrations that you exist in, the possibilities in front of you that you could never see, so that you can then remember your connection to source, remember your connection to universe, remember your connection to energy and all things, and actually see what is possible for you. Right? But you wouldn't have that unless you took yourself outside of what we physically are experiencing right now.
I was just thinking here when you were talking, I'm like, you know, I keep wondering what our distinction is in the universe, and I've recently come to think that we're like investigators of phenomenology. Like we're people who are adept or have trained ourselves to be high recognizers of like patterns in the world, because ultimately, like, we're all experiencing the same human experience, and no matter how many people I coach, I'm sure you would attest to it also, there's a machinery at play here, and there's phenomenons that occur to this machine that we're all experiencing. And granted, maybe like I don't understand rape, right? Like I've never been raped, but like I when somebody shares about it, that emotion, I understand that emotion through my body. I can feel what that feels like. I've felt something like that in my life before, and there's a universal experience. And I think with these things, when people share authentically about something, you just sit there and you go, damn, there's no difference between us at all. Like it's just such an illusion. And these experiences are just so powerful for stripping all that away, so that you can see how vulnerable, powerful, and so many other adjectives we can throw in there that we actually are. But I think it's also important to note, and I'll again use some of my drug experiences to test this also, if you're really tuning in when you're in those experiences, you're getting insights about the way that your body works and how phenomenons work against you. I mean, if you take ecstasy, you're going to experience euphoria like you've never experienced before in your entire life. Your experience of love and music is going to expand completely. Like you're never going to hear music the same way again. Like you're reprogramming your brain how to listen to music. You're reprogramming your heart how to feel. And it's just biochemical things that are happening in the brain that you're processing through the body. But like, I know what a dopamine release feels like because of that. And when it happens in my brain, I'm like, oh, that's dopamine being released. And same thing with cocaine or pot or any of these other drugs. Fine. Again, they can be very negative forces like anything else, or they could be a wonderful tool for biohacking your anatomy, essentially. So here's a question for you. Why, out of all the things that you weren't willing to put into your body, why go to the top of the pyramid?
That's a great question for me, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
look at this beast.
Because I am very. So this is the thing. Knowing I'm so aligned to the truths of like the bottom core remembrance that is, I deserve fucking everything that I want. I'm worthy of everything that I want. I'm perfect, whole, and complete. So that means, of course, my body's going to show up in total alignment, my finances, my relationships, everything, right?
Yep.
So yeah, I'm super clean and pure. And I guess maybe so from my stories in the past, it was like, oh yeah, I would never put, that's why I never did drugs. Because my experience of like alcohol or drugs, being to where I am now, would take me out of my experience, my body, right? And I think you and I were talking about this, where I'm like, I go to all these high-end things and entrepreneur stuff, and they're like, I just don't have a desire to drink, because for me, I don't want to be fuzzy. So most people will use food, or just like food is used as a, reward, deserve, a treat, a disconnect, a distraction, a validation, to not be inside of what's going on here. We use food to disconnect. I've broken through all that bullshit. So it's like, food is my fuel to feed this epic, amazing machine to allow me to experience life at the ultimate capacity. So if I put shit in it, I feel shitty. Yeah. And so down to even, if I eat something, then, and I feel off, people will be like, oh, it's so weird. Why would you, you're the most healthy person. Why would that affect you? It's exactly opposite. It completely affects me because I'm so clean. So same thing with alcohol or drugs. I never really had a desire because I don't want to be out of tune with this. Yeah. I have no desire to be like fuzzy or disconnected from my life, because my life's fucking epic.
You love your experience.
Yeah. So great question. It's like, how then, and so again, it was for me going, plants and looking at how even back in, if you look in like scriptural context, where it's like the indigenous would have these spiritual journeys, and they had these things of finding these things within themselves. We know already that from the time we're born, we're literally being programmed. Like you said, we're reprogramming everything to this remembrance of how to consciously act versus subconsciously react. And so how do we do that without allowing ourselves to strip away what's right in front of us? That's the best analogy I could use for ayahuasca, is being like, okay, how do I give myself the opportunity to go deeper than I've ever gone? And I always say I did 20 years of inner work, and then found these things inside me that were holding shame, etc., that I didn't even know were there, because I just didn't have the ability with my conscious mind here in the way that we've been trained to go, oh, that's silly. And actually, what is really true, and what is really there, and what is possible with connection, etc. So for me, it took some trusting, going, okay, so plants, and just feeling the call. I'm kind of in a place like you, where I didn't really question or look outside of myself for, is this going to be okay? Or this is what I'm feeling I get to do. Cool, I get to trust, and I'm all about the different experiences. And when you were talking, I was thinking, I feel like there's a lot missing for people to hear what is possible as far as like healing. And so when you hear these things, you go, oh wow, so you're saying I can have experiences to tune into and release the fight with my ego, to shed all shame, to, again, ask for I want to release at the core not being good enough, or not being able to fully express myself. how do I find that darkness that's been there, those blocks that have been there, see them for what they are, love on them? Because really at the core, what I would want people to hear from this, and why this kind of journey assists you to get there, is that your only job, and I don't love the word job because that can be a negative association, but let's say your only opportunity of this experience is to see everything you've ever experienced out of love, and everything you are now out of love. If everything you saw out of love, just like the ego was no longer this thing you were fighting, it was like, hey buddy, what do you want to say?
There's compassion there.
What's scaring you? Oh, I hear you. Okay, cool. Well, what if this is actually true and this can serve us, and it's just helping you to go, okay, cool, let's support you. Everything is just love. Everything is just feedback. And it's just like inconsistency in life. If we didn't experience pain or inconsistency, we wouldn't rise to the next level. Pain is actually part of our process. So is our darkness. Our darkness becomes our light. I wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be here. You experienced depression and some really hard things. Could people listen to you and be like, dude, you know how to live an awesome, amazing life, conscious, experiencing ultimate level, if you hadn't experienced depression and your thoughts taking you over and all that stuff? But when do we stop fighting that? And so I see a lot of people in self-empowerment for years will be on this like, fight. I gotta fight the thoughts. I gotta fight the beliefs. I gotta fight my identity. I gotta fight all these things. I'm constantly like, drop the fucking fight. That's all it is. And so for me, it really called to me on, how do I go deeper than I've allowed myself to ever go and drop the fight? And I came out of the jungle with like a healed liver, a healed knee. I got a total knee replacement. Like, I've seen healing happen. We could just talk to the healing. And even what you've been able to connect to do with your body, and like how we go, oh, I actually don't need healing outside of myself. I can choose right now to heal my body. But to have those kind of experiences and heal your body and do all that, just, you see what's possible, which is limitless. I know you have plenty to say.
All right. So part one right there gives you a whole dose of what ayahuasca is capable of, the fears, the expectations, the whys, all that kind of stuff. From here, it really starts transitioning into a lot of the insights delved from these experiences. So make sure you come back and check out the rest of the conversation. Hope you enjoyed this one, and we'll talk to you real soon.
Did you run through doors till you hit the floor? Did you read my